And good evening, and welcome to this January meeting of Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And I will go straight to Sinead for the housekeeping notice.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of your nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point in the front car park of this building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. And so welcome to everybody in the room and everybody online who have joined us this evening. Sinead, who hasn't been able to join us this evening?
We've received apologies from Mark Saxby and Simon Welch, and just to note that Councillor Dove is joining us online tonight.
And Councillor Martin has let me know that he will be late, but he is coming. And do we have any substitute members?
No, we don't have any substitute members.
That takes us to declarations of interest. Does anybody here or online have a declaration of interest for this evening's meeting? I'm not getting any indication. Thank you. In which case I move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. That was on the 26th of November 2024. It feels like about 6 months ago already. Does anybody have any corrections or comments on those minutes, or can I take them as a correct and true record? We're all good. Thank you very much. I will sign those later. And that takes us then on to the action sheet. I'm going to assume that everybody is happy with that, but I'm going to hand over to Sinead, who is going to take us through a couple of things.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a quick update that we've received a response regarding the contact details requested in the last January meeting. That's included on page 19 of the agenda pack. I'll include those contact details. We've received 2 emails from NHS Dorset, and I'll include those within the minutes. Additionally, I just wanted to seek agreement from the committee to remove the highlighted items off the action sheet as they've now been actioned. Thank you.
So, sorry, I'm just getting to that. Do I have the agreement of the committee for those highlighted actions to be removed? Yep. No dissension. Okay, thank you very much. That moves us on. Do we have any public issues?
No, we haven't received any public issues.
Thank you very much. And then actually unfortunately this is just dropped off the agenda, but it is not, that is still something we're coming to. So I'm now going to come to our members of the Youth Parliament for their update. Please. Elliot or Ryan, I don't know who's starting. And I can't get you, I get you mixed up anyway, so.
Thank you, Chair, and it's Elliot. So starting it off strong, so in a month's time, Ryan and I are going to be taking our trip up to the House of Commons for the first time to be able to speak. So there's 5 different topics. I can name a couple of them off the top of my head. So increased political education, votes at 16, something about the national minimum wage for kind of living wage for under 18s. And so probably one of the biggest things is that I've applied for debate lead, so I should be finding out about that soon, which would mean I get to sit on the front benches, which would be quite cool. I also sadly, I managed to get my policy point that I pushed through the committees at the annual conference around like student loans and student finance into the national manifesto of the Youth Parliament. However, it sadly didn't quite make it into being debated at the House of Commons. So yeah, that's about the House of Commons done.
And in regards to updates on my current campaign, which is the prevention of knife crime, there's so due to my constant attendance towards the stop and search panel, we're gonna have a smaller stop and search panel with youth people, which are specifically towards care experience in young people, which is good. It will be at a Poole police station. So yeah, that's one of the positives that's come out of me going to the stop and search panels, and obviously increased. Yeah, and I've also been working on my sports event. So I've been trying to sort meetings and try and get like the where I'm going to do it. So hopefully, I'm gonna make contact with Merrick Park and Oak Medians, which is where I want to hold it. And I've had a confirmed meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner, which should be soon. Which is, I think, a vital point towards the event as a whole, because I really want to spread awareness about knife crime and the dangers of it. And yeah, so I've just been trying to put those into place. And we also have a regional meeting this weekend in Taunton, which should be good to catch up before the House of Commons meet. And yeah.
And then for some of the other campaigns, so with the mental health campaign we've been working on, we've just had training with by CAMS and Mental Health in Schools participation worker, who was taking us through how to collect young people's testimonials about issues they face with their mental health and stuff like that safely, and create a safe environment for them, for the kind of resource that we're wanting to create for schools. And so we're going to be releasing a survey in Children's Mental Health Week, in which we're going to start kind of collating some responses about what schools could have done to help them when they were suffering with their mental health and stuff like that. And then hopefully through that be able to put together a focus group to get more information on that. Ruth also went to the Night Stop Homelessness Board, and during the half term there's going to be a workshop running at the Youth Forum discussing the 5 topics being debated at the House of Commons. So all young people in the kind of area are going to be able to put their views forward on that, for us to then be able to bring that forward to the House of Commons as well. And I think that's everything.
Whew. Well, I just filled a page. That's extraordinary. That's since November. Okay. Comments or any questions from the committee? Emily.
Thank you, Chair. The mental health surveys you were talking about earlier, is that just going to your schools or the places where you guys attend, or is it something you would like to get out to a wider range of schools and youth clubs and places like that? Is there anything we could do to use art networks to help get more responses, to give you a greater sample of responses?
So I think the plan is to try and get it out as wide as we possibly can. So I know that we're going to have influence in the schools that we're at, so we're definitely going to exploit that. But also we're going to hopefully kind of use the socials, so the kind of youth parliament socials, but maybe even the BCP council socials where possible. But I think we just kind of want to get it out as wide as we can to get the most responses, to create the best resource possible. So if there is anything you guys could do to help us, like if you've got any particular sway of schools or contacts or stuff once we get that together.
Yeah, just could I ask what age range as well? So in my ward, we don't have any secondary schools. It is just a primary school. But if it is predominantly sort of 11 plus, so I don't know what your age range is that you're appealing to, do have a look at those schools in the area. And I would say please do approach the councillors, because I think most councillors would have contacts with the schools and would be very happy to do what they can to make those connections for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the plan is we're kind of targeting it for secondary years, so 11 to 18 is what the plan for it is. Thank you.
Sorry, Sharon, over to you, please.
So we can absolutely help with that. So if you just let us know when and where, we can communicate Sharon Muldoon, Interim Director for Education, so we can absolutely send that out to head teachers and have a conversation with them. So not a problem, just let us know and we'll support you in that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Peter.
Yeah, I'll echo what Emily and Sharon have said. Certainly with the Cornerstone Academy and Hamworthy, they'd be really happy to kind of work with you. Also, I'm really pleased to hear that you're meeting with the Youth Forum. So in terms of engagement and numbers, how are you finding that? Because it's a massive conurbation you're working in. So that's probably kind of logistically difficult, or I'm assuming that in terms of getting people together from, kind of a variety of backgrounds and stuff. Is it working well, and what would you advise us to do to improve it for you, so we could support your youth workers and yourselves in reaching out to more young people?
I think it's definitely tough trying to kind of get stuff out to everyone. So I think what we're trying to do, so with that, to kind of bring their views and hopefully to be able to kind of say that in the House of Commons we've spoken to these people. And I think the Youth Forum is definitely a really good way of going about that. We're hoping for the kind of mental health side of stuff to, when we have the kind of celebration event, which we did last year when it was announced that we had kind of been elected for Youth Parliament, to kind of have young people together from the forum and anyone there to do a workshop to kind of discuss some of our findings and to kind of gather their findings and have them do the survey to try and get their views as well. But yeah, I think it is a tough part trying to kind of get everyone's views together and represent everyone. So
I'd just like to say thank you for your hard work and engagement, commitment, and any support that we can give you. You just shout loud. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Emily.
I was just going to say, I'm really interested in what you're talking about, about voting and political education, because I've just done a youth surgery at Winton, and we have asked them about if they thought the voting age should be lowered. So if you wanted me to share that data with you, I could send that to you, because we recorded yes, no, unsure, and some of the conversations. And also our next one, we were going to ask, because a lot of them then said, I said, but do you know who you'd vote for? And they were all quite quiet then. So I think the next time we go in, we're going to have quite a big discussion. So if you wanted to have a chat about any of that, it was really interesting actually. And some of them had some really good reasons as to why they shouldn't, because it was quite split. It was more split than we thought it would be, about saying, I trust myself to vote, but I don't trust lots of other 16-year-olds. So it was quite interesting. So Councillor Burton was there as well for that. So yeah, I can pass that information over to you if you'd like it. I'm quite happy to send it to you.
yeah, I'd really love if you did. I think definitely the kind of view when I've spoken to people is that people like votes at 16 should be a thing, but young people aren't really politically aware enough. So I think it is more of and if chosen for debate lead, or if I get chosen by the speaker to speak, during that debate, I think the main thing I'm going to focus in on is that political education, because I don't think enough's being delivered in BSHE lessons and things like that. I don't think people are getting the political education unless they take politics A levels. So,
Oliver.
I don't have social media anymore, so I don't actually know the answer to the question, so I thought I'd ask it. Do you guys post like what you get up to on BCP's social media page, like our Facebook page? Does it show the things that you guys are voting on? Does it show that you're looking for responses to these kinds of things?
Well, we don't. We try to get out as much content about what we're doing and where we're going. But I think we could definitely use it more as a way to spread awareness and get other people's views. But I think so far that we haven't really used it in that way. We've definitely just been using it about what we're doing and how we're doing it. But yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure our comms team would be more than happy to put things like on our Facebook page and and other assorted social media websites?
I believe we do have access to kind of like the BCP council pages, so we've used those a few times, but I know there's like more kind of hoops to jump through if you're going to do that. But we are definitely planning on using it more. So with my kind of finance campaign, I'm planning on releasing a survey for that over the next couple of months for the kind of creation of the leaflet that I'm going to do around what kind of 11 to 18-year-olds want to know about university. So the plan is to kind of hear directly from them through the use of the socials and a survey like that about what the questions they have are, to then send that off to some organisations I've been talking to, so My Bank and Save the Student, to then get the answers to their questions, to collate it. So we should definitely be using the socials more now that we're kind of properly established and we're kind of getting ahead with our campaigns.
Excellent, thank you. I've just got a brief comment to Ryan. Yes, about your meeting with the PCC around knife. Is it just about the knife crime campaign? Is that?
So the meeting that it's been confirmed, because obviously it was quite hard to get a meeting with him, but I do plan to talk about how I can get support in my event, but also talk to him in general about my knife crime, my prevention of knife crime campaign, and just really take advantage of the opportunity of speaking to him, because obviously I think for my campaign he's the best person to talk to. But yeah, it's more of a getting ties with, seeing how he can support me, and trying to get sort of ties with the police, because I think that is like the main encompass of my campaign that I need to focus on. But yeah.
No, I was just thinking about the follow-up work that we need to do on our working group report from last summer, and so tying in, hearing what you get from that meeting will be very interesting for us. So thank you. It's great that you've got that meeting. Any other comments from the committee at this stage for the members of the Youth Parliament? Thank you very much for your reports. Do obviously stay and participate in the rest of the meeting, but fantastic. It's really positive to hear what you're up to, and my goodness, you're up to a lot. So brilliant, well done. Thank you. Right, so that takes us to the substantive items on the agenda in terms of papers. And our first paper is the Children in Care and Care Experienced Young People Sufficiency Report. And I'd like to invite Sarah Langdale, who's joined us, to present the report and get our questions ready for her. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, you need the microphone, otherwise the camera won't go to you and we can't hear you properly. There we go.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Sarah Langdale. I'm the head of Children's Commissioning here at BCP, and I'm going to run you through the report for today. Children's Services have a statutory duty to provide a sufficiency strategy. The strategy focuses on the accommodation needs of children in care and care experienced young people, and to ensure that we've got sufficient accommodation within BCP for that cohort, those young people. And I'm going to refer to them as homes. I'm sorry. Thank you. So,
I think it's
Sorry.
the wrong mic. I
Yeah,
think
you
need
just
the
need
other
that
mic.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it should pan to the right place.
well, I've been on camera. I'll take you through the report. I'm going to assume that everybody's read the report and the appendix, if that's okay. So we have a statutory duty to produce this. We produce the strategy over a period of time. This strategy is over a 4-year period, but we take annual data and we use that data to inform the priorities for each annual update of this report. Our focus this year we have, or for the first year of this report, the 24-25, we had 6 key priorities. Those were linked to overarching sufficiency pressures that had been identified through the analysis of the data. I'll not go through them in detail, but we did categorise them in the report under section 3, and they were children in care, our care experienced young people, and then overarching children's services. I'll then move us on to the actual priorities themselves and the progress that has been made against those priorities, and this progress has been made over the last roughly 10 or 11 months this financial year. So the priorities themselves, local family-based care that's available, and we like to always try to offer homes for our young people. One of the key priorities here is our in-house fostering service and the retention and recruitment strategy that they're developing. That is now in development, and our focus is around increasing the numbers of in-house foster carers and supported lodgings carers so that children can remain in homes in BCP and in family-based care. Priority 2, I'm not going to go through each of the key areas. Priority 2 is sufficiency of local residential provision. So that's making sure that we've got enough registered residential care provision for our young people. We've developed this market quite well over the last 12 months, and what we're seeing is growth in this market locally within BCP, which means more of our children with complex needs can stay locally. We've seen an increase of 2 beds in the learning disability market, and we're seeing an increase in the next quarter 4, quarter that we're currently in, the beginning of 2025, in terms of the residential market. So we're looking at an increase potentially of around 8 to 10 beds this quarter, which is significant for us, and it means that more young people will be able to remain in BCP. Increase in supported lodgings accommodation. Actually, for our data, we've now got sufficient accommodation, supported accommodation, and registered. So there was a change in legislation in October 23, which means that all our supported accommodation provision now needs to be registered. We have roughly about 74 beds in BCP now, and not all of which we're utilising. So we're working with the market to utilise those beds, but that's been significant growth, which is really positive. And that spans the accommodation now. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, we only had provision in Bournemouth. We now have provision in Christchurch and in Poole. So we're providing a choice for our young people, which is really important. And we've also created a graduated response. So we're looking at step down. So we've got different providers that offer different levels of supported accommodation, which means that we can prepare children better for independence, which is really important. We're also doing some priority 4, some really good collaboration with our housing colleagues. So as our young people start to step down from supported accommodation, we're working with our colleagues in housing about that move on accommodation, that move into independence, and what that looks like for our young people. Absolutely noting that not everybody is ready to live on their own at 18. That's a really big jump for them. So we're looking at various types of supported accommodation. Some of that is commissioned through housing, and that's low, medium and high support. And we've also been successful in our single homelessness accommodation programme, which I was part of the tender for, and we've successfully invited Centrepoint into BCP, who are managing those provisions for us. And that's created, or it will create, around 19 units in total. But I'm pleased to say that of the units that are currently available, our care experience young people are actually occupying around 90% of those, which is a real success in terms of our care experience young people. Priority 5, improving relationships with providers. This has been a real focus for us from a commissioning perspective, really focusing down on that quality of the provision and going back out into the market and visiting. All our local providers have now been visited. We've seen the homes. The homes are of a really high standard and homely. And we've also made links with the young people that are living there. And we've seen those provider relationships flourish. This quarter, we're going to reintroduce our provider forums. So we're going to be looking at bringing our local providers together. So at the moment, you might have 5 or 6 supported accommodation providers in BCP. Although they talk to each other sporadically, we want to bring them together as a partnership. And we're going to do that individually for our residential supported accommodation and our fostering market, but also collectively once a quarter, they'll all come together. And what we're looking for is that graduated pathway for our young people. And our last priority is all around embedding our governance in our quality assurance frameworks. So we've drafted a quality assurance framework of what good looks like in terms of the accommodation provision for our young people, how we'll monitor it. We're monitoring the quality of the provision in terms of their Ofsted ratings. And like I say, we're also going out and we've visited all our providers, not just our accommodation providers, but also our education providers. So our alternative education providers have all been visited to make sure that where we've got young people living in supported accommodation or residential accommodation, actually the standard of the education that they are receiving is also where we would like it to be. So with that in mind, we have got some risk areas that we've identified for 25-26, and again those are listed. So I'm aware of time, I'll not go through them all individually, but some of the areas that we would like to focus on again is around our in-house recruitment and retention of foster carers, our care experienced young people's accommodation, and do we have enough of it? Our data tells us that actually we'd like to increase but also provide a range of accommodation, and that could go from shared ownership through to mortgages, through absolutely noting that we're probably not living in the same accommodation we were living in when we were 18, and actually we want to create that those options for young people. Continue with our market management, so BCP homes for BCP children, allowing young people to remain where they've grown up and connected to family members is really important. The contractual arrangements, so we're currently looking at the moment we spot purchase our supported accommodation provision. What we would like to move to is a framework arrangement. We believe that will achieve better value for us in our commissioning arrangements, but also drive the standard up for us as well. And then working with our colleagues both internally and externally around the public perception of children's homes and care experienced accommodation. It's a real focus for us. So, and I'd just like to end really on what we've managed to achieve this year. So the highlights for us. So increased in provider relationships, increased in provider accommodation, and also that the fact that we can offer more choice across BCP now, right from Christchurch right through to Poole. We've had a real focus on our unaccompanied asylum seeking accommodation. We know through the NTS, the National Transfer Scheme, that there is a need for that accommodation and that Kent is overloaded. So we've successfully engaged with a provider that we've been working with for a number of years. One on care experienced accommodation, so they're an expert in that, but I'm pleased to say that they've now just submitted their application to Ofsted for 16 and 17-year-old accommodation. So they'll be registering that provision in the coming months. They've submitted their application. That means that our unaccompanied cohort can remain in BCP, whereas for a number of years, unfortunately, they've had to move out of BCP to Southampton. So hopefully that will come in the summer or early autumn of 2025. We've created growth in the market, so that's really positive for us. We've seen 2 new residential children's home providers express an interest in opening up in BCP, and we've managed to implement robust compliance standards and complete in-person visits. So we know that the homes that we're sending our children to are of the required standard that we would want for our own children, which is really positive. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of the report and where we currently are. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm now open to points and questions. David.
So thank you, and again, apologies for being late today. Thank you for that, really helpful. I just had a couple of quick questions, if that's okay. I'd be really interested to understand or see if it can be shared, just that under priority 6, the actual framework, once the final draft's been signed off in January, I'd just be really curious to see what standards we're capturing in that, if that would be allowed or is appropriate. And second, again, forgive me if I've missed it or it is somewhere in here, but is there any way that we can get a little bit closer to hearing our young people that are in, going through this, their experiences. I know they're not necessarily going to arrive here directly and share an experience, but through our young people, we can hear anonymous data.
Thank you. I work closely with Becky and the Unite group, Unite and Insight, that's it, sorry, groups to capture young people's voices. And also, as we've gone round, I've personally gone round to the local children's homes and supported accommodation, I've witnessed and met young people in the homes. So I've talked to them about their experiences, what it's like to live in certain types of accommodation and their journeys through. And we've also worked with our housing colleagues to capture some of that.
Thank you very much.
And the framework, sorry, you may have answered. Did you say yes? Was that a yes to the framework?
Yes, it's in final draft at the moment and about to go through our governance process. So as soon as it's signed off, we'll happily share that.
Thank you. I'm over to Emily, please.
Thank you. Mine leads on from Dave's quite nicely, because my big thing as well was children's voices. It sounds like you're doing lots of good work talking to the providers, bringing the providers together. You've spoken about visiting, but at the end of the day, it's all about the children and young people. And you mentioned just then about when you visit, you sort of talk to people. I wonder, how is that sort of meaningfully and tangibly then translated? How are we recording that? How are we then using that to sort of, if there's issues, act on those issues, or if there's positive things, just how are we using that information?
So probably about 12 months ago, I met a young person at their property. They were a care experienced young person. They'd been offered a property, but it had come to my attention that they weren't happy with that property. So what I did was go round to that property with them. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, to see actually what was the quality of that provision. Was it of the standard that I would hope for our children? And actually it wasn't. So I worked with colleagues in housing and internally in children's services to change the process around the bidding for those properties, but also around the quality. Is it okay for a young person to stand there and for the property to be dirty and then have to clean it from the outset? Is that what I would want for my young person, for my children? No, it isn't. So what we did was we worked together to change the sign-off standard for housing in terms of their accommodation for young people, and that was actually quite successful. But as I've gone around to the children's homes and the supported accommodation, what I've done is try to capture the views of young people about what they enjoy about living within that accommodation, or what they don't like, and then I link in with Becky to try and hear their voices, and we've done some work through the Youth Parliament and other such in order to capture that and then feed it into our accommodation and our sufficiency strategy.
Thank you. And just to follow up to that, so that sounds brilliant, but slightly sporadic. Like, how, for each and every child, obviously, what mechanisms are in place to ensure that, because, when you go and visit, sort of that's just going to be random, and those children who are confident, or are young people confident enough to say something, thinking about sort of the reality of the situation, if there is an issue, how do those young people, what does that process look like, them raising a concern or an issue and then it being acted upon so it goes to the right place? Does that make sense?
If I can just jump in, if that's okay, you're very welcome to answer, but I know Rachel wants to come in at this point, so that may help.
That's all right. It's much broader than just relying on Sarah to meet with individual young people and that type of thing. So we've got a range of activities across the whole system within children's services, within housing, and through the children's rights and engagement team, of how any of our young people can feed back to us on any issues where they may encounter work with us. We're really in a really lucky position to have the children's rights and engagement team who drive some of that sort of targeted work with children and young people to get their feedback, and they may be doing specific pieces of work on specific topics. But we've also got the quality assurance framework, which is embedded across the whole of children's services, where we do practice learning reviews, and we get individual children's feedback through that. We have practice weeks where we go out and observe and meet children and young people through that. Social workers do feedback through their individual meetings with children and young people. So it's vast, the range of where we hear the voice of the young people, and then through our governance processes, that would all get fed back, and then we pick out the themes, and then we look at what we've got to change through the service, through some of those themes. And you'll tomorrow the ILAC's result comes out, and you'll see in the report some of the positive things that have been said about the voice of the children and young people.
That is very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I know Richard wanted to come in at that point as portfolio holder, so let's.
Yeah, I'd just like to add the role of the corporate parenting board in this, because that's one of the things that is the purpose of the corporate parenting board. Now, unfortunately, the corporate parenting board isn't a public meeting because we have young people involved in it. But I do know we've got one member of Children's ONS on the corporate parenting board. We get young people who care experience and children in care who come and we hear their voice there, and they do a lot of work with the engagement team to bring the voice of other young people to it. Now, we're doing quite a lot of work in trying to change the corporate parenting voice so that we hear the corporate parenting board, so we hear more of the young person's voice, and we're in that process at the moment. And one of the things which I'm hoping we can do is start inviting counsellors out to come along on their own as one or two as a guest to experience the corporate parenting board, because of course we're all corporate parents. I also want to do it with more officers as well from other areas, so that although they won't be a member of the board, because it has to be the right number but they can come and experience it and hear some of that voice as well. So that is on my radar.
Thank you, Emily. Are you finished? You happy? Good, excellent. Thank you. No, just checking. Peter.
Thanks for your presentation. I've got loads of things in my head, but it's almost like, and I don't want to seem negative, it's just some of the barriers that we might have to overcome with the fiscal constraints of the council and the forward plan. So in terms of that, it's kind of how if I ask a series of questions, is that okay? So there's one about resource constraints, about although you've got a strategy and a plan, which is a really good plan, if you were to sit down and say, well, what's going to be a barrier to this? What are they, and how can we assist to enable that challenge? The recruitment, challenges for foster parents. And there's issues around different pay scales with Dorset and us, and that's an emerging issue which foster parents are getting a little bit uptight about, and I wonder how that might affect the long-term plan. The kind of reliance on the market to deliver housing. I hope we don't move into a kind of a state of over-reliance on that, and how that long-term might impact the role of BCP to be in control of quality standards and all that kind of stuff. So that's really about market pressures coming in to upset the strategy, as good as it is, because it is one, it's quite good. The thing about the voice of children and young people and their families, I think, is really important, and for that to be a collaborative. I know Joe and her team are working really hard on that, and the more you can do on that, the kind of better. The question I would ask after what Joe said is, do they identify what the key themes and messages that come through? They're part of that process. I would assume they are.
Yeah, we do it in all sorts of different ways. So
Sorry, could we have a microphone on? Thank you.
Sorry.
I just.
For the voice of the child, we do it in there's just a vast range of different things that we do. We've just finished the Bright Spot survey as well, which Becky's team has done, and we'll be getting the results of that very soon. So that's sort of when we have a company come in and help us get some of that information. We do, like I said earlier on, we do the one-on-one, we do the group work and all of that type of thing. So it's a wide range, a really vast range.
I would expect so. So it's great. Just a few more, if that's all right. So there's market pressures. There's in terms of the high demand children and complex needs. How can we meet those within the different requirements of specialist housing provision? That I think that's going to be an emerging thing, isn't it? So, and also preparing children for independence, which I suppose is really children. We have a very, the corporate parent role, the protected characteristics, the, kids who are been brought up by families can ring up their mum and dad and ask them to lend 50 quid and all this kind of stuff. So I don't want to sound negative. It's just that I'm sure that within the plan that we're looking at the barriers that are out there, and it would be nice to see that in responses and stuff. Thank you.
That's okay. So you're quite right. There are some challenges out there, but for me they're positive challenges, if I'm honest. So I've done this job for a very long time. For me, at the moment, we're seeing positive growth in our market. I think one of the areas that we need to focus on is around the profits that these organisations are making from young people and from local authorities, and over the coming 12 months that will be our focus, one of our focuses, to understand what organisations we've got within BCP, what of those organisations, what are profit making organisations and what their profits look like and how they link to the fees that those organisations are charging us. We don't want anyone to profit from our young people, so that's a real focus for us as we move forward over the next 12 months. Other challenges that you've talked about, and that includes foster care rates and how we can be competitive over foster carers. We're part of some regional frameworks around independent fostering agencies. We're not utilising the carers that we've got adequately enough in BCP at the moment, and some of that is around partnership building that we need to do. We've touched on the voice of the young child, of the child already. In terms of specialist housing, some of the programmes that housing are working on in terms of care experience young people, the Homewards Project, the SHAP funding, and other initiatives that they've got through HAST, will hopefully see a growth in that market, but also the work that they're doing and we're doing alongside our adult social care partners in terms of identifying needs. So those cohorts that are currently known to our Children with a Disability team, what they look like and what those emerging needs are, because we know that lived experience is important, but also that the birth rates are higher in terms of those that are living through complex need. So it's taking all of that in. It's not easy, and that's where we look to the private sector to provide that accommodation for us, but it has to be at a competitive rate. I think we're quite lucky in some ways in BCP that we've got some really good, robust, established adult social care providers that are looking at the children's market and that independent sector. So what we don't want to do is for a child, whether they're eligible for adult social care or not, to not to have the right kind of support and accommodation post 18. So we're working with a local provider on a national model that we hope to roll out here. But it's always going to be an interesting role.
Okay, just one supplementary, if that's all right. In terms, you just mentioned it, the care leavers support gaps. Are there anything that is, a massive void that we need to work on?
I think it's always going to be a challenge in BCP. Half of us is missing because of the sea. We're a university town, so we lose some of our accommodation to that. And also we're seeing private rents increase. But through collaborative working with housing and the private sector, we hope to be able to overcome that. And also by offering a range and a choice. So we want to aspire for our young people, we want them to be able to go to university. If they're eligible, we want them to have shared ownership or mortgages. Also noting that we want them to live and grow within their community and to be able to have a choice of accommodation. So absolutely noting that we may not be living in the same accommodation now that we were living in at 18. So we want our young people to have the same choice as we've had, but there are some challenges that we need to overcome.
Thank you.
It's a simple vision, isn't it? But it's complex to deliver. David wanted to come in again.
Can I just check my understanding, please, around short break provisions? Just what they exactly are, if I think they are what I think they are, please.
We need to be a little bit mindful of the terminology of short breaks, because short breaks means a range of services. So it can be for our most complex young people, and we may offer a range of respite accommodation. That might be overnight or daytime respite with a carer or a registered provision. Or we may offer, and at the other end of the scale, short breaks in terms of positive activities. So where you as a family may have a child that's been diagnosed with a need, a special educational need, and they may go as a family and receive stay and play, for example. Or mum and dad might stay and have a coffee, and the young people are supported by support workers to be able to go and enjoy time with their peers. So it's short breaks is a range of activities dependent on the needs of the young person.
So, because obviously this is under the key pressure summary, isn't it? Around that. So when it says insufficient short break provisions to meet need, is that just in line with the financial pressure associated with that? I presume that some things have got to be cut, national, local, and that might be one that's maybe not sort of a statutory element to it.
No, we're not looking to cut funding in that area, but what we're looking to do is to know ourselves better. So use the data to understand the need within BCP, and then use that data in order to ensure that we've got sufficient services to meet that need. We've recently undertaken a position statement of BCP, and the data and that work is ongoing. It will be co-produced, and we're currently breaking it down into areas. Our first area will be to look at our Send Universal offer, so those young people that are open to send services that may meet the eligibility for a short break. But we're absolutely not looking to cut funding. We're looking to be innovative and work with partners about what we can deliver and how we should be delivering it.
I have a quick question. Sorry, because I'm scribbling furiously. You may have already covered this, and I apologise if I've missed it. In priority 6, you're talking about the Ofsted ratings of the providers in BCP, and it appears from this that there are some that requires improvement and inadequate. And I just wondered what kind of rate is that at? Roughly, and could you just give me an idea of what it looks like, what work you do? Because you say improvement plans obtained. I mean, is that sort of co-produced with you in any way? What does that really look like? How do you monitor that?
Okay, we've got a very small number, and off the top of my head, I want to say one provider with one home. So there's one provider in BCP that's got about 4 homes. One of their homes is rated requires improvement. All their other homes are rated good. When in respect of the monitoring plan, when Ofsted come in and inspect a home, if it is rated RI or inadequate, requires improvement or inadequate, the home is required to produce an action plan on how they will what's the correct terminology? Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So how they will improve on the areas that Ofsted have identified, and we work together with them on that. So it's their responsibility to produce it. We meet with them on a monthly basis to monitor their progress against that action plan, and we provide support where we can. So if there are areas where they require support from us, then we would provide that, and we monitor that, and we may be asked by Ofsted to feed into it at times. So it's about for us, it's about partnership working. So it's about identifying where the need is and then ensuring that the provider is meeting that. And then obviously if they're not making sufficient progress in a timely manner, about understanding why that is, or if progress is not where we would like it to be, again working with them to try and improve that.
Thank you. Did you want to come in? No. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, so we are asked, the recommendation for this is that the committee acknowledges and understands the Children's Services statutory responsibility to produce a sufficiency strategy in relation to the accommodation needs of children in care and care experienced young people. I'm not aware that this is going anywhere else like Cabinet or anything like that, so there's no recommendation attached in that respect. So I suppose I'm just really asking, Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that recommendation? I'm looking to the committee for that. Because I think we've had actually a really good debate on that. I have to say, I thought that was incredibly informative. So thank you very much. So if there's nothing to add, do we agree that we agree and understand, and that we are happy with the approach being taken in this regard? We are. Oh yeah, thank you.
Probably.
Never, Peter.
Which would be great because it's complex. But it's about having a paper about the barriers that you've got a really good plan, and then if you look at what barriers are going to make us stumble, if we could look at that. If you think that's too complex, then just say no.
Rachel would like to comment on that.
Thank you. So we raise all of our risks, and they're all in our Children's Services Risk Register and in our improvement plan as well. So any of those barriers that Sarah has identified, or anybody in the service has identified, will all go into the improvement plan and be managed through that improvement plan. So we can bring that back here and raise the commissioning elements through that action plan.
What I'm wondering is if all those risks are already identified and managed through that plan, I wonder if that's something that the committee needs to hear at another meeting, or if it's something that could be perhaps shared by email to the committee, perhaps pulled out a little bit and, but done by email rather than as a committee paper. It's just a suggestion. What do people feel? Or would you rather discuss this? Would you like to have this back for discussion? Peter, I'm sure you have a view. Okay, Rachel wants to come back on that, so let's hear.
So this commissioning work stretches across the whole of Children's Services, so it's incorporated in the Children's Services Improvement Plan and also in the SEND Improvement Plan, because it crosses both, doesn't it? Could we have a discussion outside of this meeting about how best we do that, so we don't repeat work and having to produce more plans in order to satisfy the request? Is that okay?
Is the committee happy for me to take that as an action that we discuss? And
Absolutely.
yes, happily. Thank you very much. Yes, let's do that. Have you got that? Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. That was very, very good. Enjoyed listening to that. So we then move on to the Education and Skills Capital Programme. Now this is headed to Cabinet, I believe, in March. I am coming to Tanya. We have Tanya online, don't we? Wonderful. There's Tanya. So yes, Tanya will present and get your questions ready. Over to you, please, Tanya.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Yes, this is the Education and Skills Capital Programme. No doubt you've had an opportunity to read and digest the content. I suppose the key points I'd like to emphasise in bringing this strategy to you is it's very much a high-level view of what we anticipate expenditure and investment in our school looks like. There's a bit of background on pages 1 and 2, including details of sources of funding, which of course do include school condition allocations, which are there to help ensure that we deliver good estate management for our schools that still have maintained legal status. So that's the school condition allocation. Basic needs, obviously, about places, and then we've got high needs capital grant, which we are all interested in and has a high profile, particularly in the context of our SEND improvement plan. And then, of course, we've got early years expansion. So that's the sort of parameters based on funding that we've got. You will have noted on page 4 that table 2 sets out the proposed new schemes for the programme. Again, very high level, gives you an idea then of the programme of investment to maintain the fabric of our school buildings, our maintained school buildings, in terms of ensuring that they're safe, they're suitable, they support the day-to-day delivery and also urgent works. So those are works that we can't readily anticipate based on the condition survey data that we hold. So that table there, high level stuff in terms of condition, but then moving on down into send advanced design fees in that table, specialist place provision and alternative provision very much then supports our strategic direction on and our strategic intent in terms of increasing local availability of specialist places as well as alternative provision and promoting that inclusion in our maintained schools. There is commentary to that effect on page 4. You can see the commentary there that covers both the maintained school estate and going on then to page 5. Quite a bit of detail there around from paragraph 11 around our intent in terms of that sufficiency focus. I think it's really important as well to say that there are lots of opportunities at the moment in terms of this investment. Lots of opportunities come with uncertainty. The sorts of opportunities I'm talking about, particularly with the Labour government now in the seat, is opportunities for investment that we don't yet know about. So I suppose this is a cautious report, and it's cautious because we always seek to maximise investment in BCP. So we don't necessarily want to commit funding from our programme if that funding then can be found from elsewhere. So we'll just wait and see. We are working with the DfE. We've got our free school bid that was successful for the provision of a new school for children with autism spectrum condition, and we wait and see for more news on that, as well as potentially then the opportunity for alternative provision, say new alternative provision or specialist places. We don't know yet, but it is a possibility. So really important to sort of stress that. Last thing I wanted to say is the wraparound care and expanded entitlements that the government announced in 2022, real success story there in being able to allocate the funding out to the early years sector so that they can expand, and that expansion includes their wraparound provision so that they've got provision on their site from between the hours of 8 and 6, but also then that expanded places in terms of the extended entitlements for children from 9 months old right up to they start school. So working at a pace with that, already delivered in terms of our targets set out to the DfE in our delivery plan, and as I say, that's a really good news story and much needed investment, I think, in the sector who do have concerns about their overall sustainability. Last thing then, sorry, I did say I wouldn't take you through it in detail, but just to say summary position, table 3, page 6 or 98 in your pack, sets out then what's the allocation, what's the pre-approved schemes that we've already got running that will continue to run in this programme, what's the new schemes requiring approval, and then what's the total investment and any grant funding remaining. So I think this gives us a real framework, a positive framework under which we will bring schemes to Cabinet in line with the financial regulations for approval. So where they meet those spend thresholds, we will be coming to you with details of the schemes. So you can absolutely be reassured that there's openness and transparency, and of course that we are seeking that scrutiny and challenge from members and supporting our community and delivering on our key priorities as discussed or as mentioned. So I'll hand back to you, Councillor Carr-Brown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Comprehensive as ever. So, do I have any questions from the committee? Any points to raise? Emily.
Thank you, Sharon. I didn't want to be the first. I always look around just to check it's not always me. Thank you, Tanya. That was really helpful. In the report, it mentions the belonging strategy, and I just wondered, there's lots of strategies that we get told about, and just would someone give me a brief recap on specifically what that focuses on, so just we can understand this report a little bit more in that context? Thank you.
You haven't missed it because it's obviously I'm leaving shortly, and Lisa and Scott will be starting with us next week. So the belonging strategy is also linked to inclusion, and it incorporates how we work across the system for all of our learners, but particularly our most vulnerable learners. So it picks up the SEND inclusion aspect, but also then picks up the universal provision in terms of inclusion, engagement and belonging, and feeling part of the education system locally, and focusing on keeping as many of our children as we can in mainstream provision to thrive and do well, but where those children and young people maybe need to have that specialist provision, that they have that, but that we get the whole of the system working well. So it also picks up some of the issues we've talked here around the use of alternative provision, exclusion, suspension, reintegration, and sets out an approach across the partnership. So it's a local authority strategy, but it's being co-produced with our Parents Carers Together forum for our SEND learners, but also with schools through some of the co-production workshops we've had over the last 6 to 9 months. So you haven't missed it, because it's coming, and it's also, we've created that strategy alongside our NEAT strategy, so we've actually got the whole pathway, but also thinking about things around attendance, education, neglect, etc. So there's a suite of strategies which will be socialised, I would imagine, end of February, early March, once Lisa's joined the organisation, and Tanya and the colleagues have taken Lisa through those.
Thank you, Sharon. And at risk of, I don't want to be rude about other strategies, because there's lots of strategies, but the way you've just explained that sounds so exciting and needed, and I'm very, very excited to read it. Do we have a timeline on when that might be?
So they're in draft. They're literally in a folder waiting for Lisa's arrival, for a conversation, and then hopefully onward delivery of that. Kathy and I had the conversation with my exit and Lisa's arrival. It'd probably be better just to wait for that moment, just so that Lisa's brought up to speed with those strategies. But they are very nearly there, and as I've said, they have been co-produced with school leads and our Parents Carers Together forum.
Thank you, Sharon. And then can I assume by what you've just said, this is your last children's ONS meeting? Well, on behalf of, I don't want to say on behalf of, that's not my job, but thank you for your input from me personally. Thank you.
You can on behalf as much as you like. But I do echo that sentiment entirely. Thank you very much, and it's been excellent working with you for the period that I have, and I'm sure I do speak for all of us when I say that, but everyone else can say their piece. Any other? Sandra, sorry, we do have another question on this.
Thank you, Chair. Alternative provision. Can you give some examples of what is provided as alternative provision as yet?
Sorry, can I just clarify? Is that going to Tanya or is that going to Sharon?
Whoever.
Do you want that, Sharon?
I don't mind, or Tanya, but do you want to, Tanya, or do you want me to?
You can go for it, Sharon. Yeah, happy for that.
So it has come here before. I think we brought the alternative provision improvement plan here. There is a dedicated piece of work looking at alternative provision, its use, its types from primary through to secondary, but also for some of our older learners as well. We are in a process of creating an approved supplier list, where we, and Sarah, our colleague that's just been with us today, has been very instrumental in delivering that as well. So we as a local authority will commission alternative provision. That will be for some of our children with an education, health and care plan, but it also may be for a child who's been excluded from mainstream. The types of alternative provision can vary depending on the child's needs and their specific needs and requirements and representations around that. For a detailed overview, probably best to have another item on it because it's a growing area of our system. We have an increasing use of alternative provision, and it links absolutely back to the issue that Emily's just raised around belonging and inclusion, because part of our conversations with our school partners is that we need to use alternative provision where we must, but also focus on that broader reintegration back into mainstream where children could and should be supported in mainstream. So it can be many and varied. high volume at this point in time, but we are, through our belonging strategy, seeking to use it less frequently, but also for many of our students or children not to be an end destination, to be a place and a space where they have the support they need to be reintegrated back into mainstream.
Can I just... I'm going to word this very carefully. I have heard a few horror stories with some alternative provisions regarding tutors, where the tutors that are employed, what's the word, criteria that they're employed on? Are they tutors, are they teachers, or are they, can I say the word? Sorry, don't shoot me down. Babysitters? Sorry. Sorry.
I think there's a national issue around alternative provision and the registration of it, which doesn't currently exist. So from our perspective as a local authority, we have an approved supplier list, which, and I can't speak to the detail, but we can certainly bring it here, that checks safer recruitment processes and policies. There is a distinction between teaching and support, and that needs to be understood, and our quality assurance system does do that. I think probably aware there's a national debate around the provision of alternative provision and a framework and registration requirement for that. At this point in time, we have our local accredited system, which puts some conditions in place, but it is in a regulated space at this point in time.
Can I just add something else very quickly? Because obviously, say a child's been excluded, they've got an alternative provider, an alternative provision with a tutor, and they're not getting their allocated hours due to, I won't go into details, but however, is there can tutors be struck off if they feel that they are not?
I'm just wondering if we perhaps could take this offline, because this is a capital item.
I think, yeah.
I think
Sorry, I was just
perfectly legitimate line of questioning, but I'm just wondering if it would be better done by email on a more personal level, if that's okay.
Lovely, thank you.
I must confess, I know you said just perhaps another piece of work, and I didn't quite, because I was talking to Simon at that moment, I didn't quite catch what you were referring to then.
So we brought alternative provision, I think, a year last September here, and we mentioned an alternative provision improvement plan, which is separate to the SEND improvement plan that Rachel's just described. That sets out commissioning arrangements and a number of priorities for improvement. It's an existing programme of work. It has school representation, alternative providers on the board, and parent carers, actually, who are incredibly valuable, back to the earlier kind of engagement piece of work. So that's an existing improvement work strand. So if you wanted to have a deep dive on it, back to Rachel's point, it's already in existence. It's no additional work, and Tanya and one of our other colleagues can absolutely talk to that.
I feel like you were going to say something, Rachel.
I was going to say it might be a good topic for one of the working groups that we've got in between these meetings.
So do you mean the briefing sessions in between?
Yeah.
Yes. Can we make a note of that, please? I think sorry, here's me just streaming ahead. How does the committee feel about that as a suggestion for one of the topics for the briefing sessions that we have in between these meetings?
Yeah.
Happy with that? Wonderful. Thank you. So decided. Marvellous. Thank you for that. And I'm going to go here first, and then I'll go to Peter. Simon.
Oh, mine is purely a checking of the figures on table 1 on page 2 of the report. Is the SCA 5.6 million off or 5.9 million? I know it's only 350,000, but it's supposed to be accurate.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, I think the SCAR allocations we've presented include some indicative amounts going forward. So what we can be really clear on is the amount expressed in the 24-25 column is the actual amount that we've got, and those other amounts are indicative.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
I think it was the contrast between the table and the bullet points above as well. That was all.
Yeah.
the second bullet point outlines 5.6 million. But anyway.
Yeah, I'll make sure that for cabinet they say the same figure. Thank you.
Thank you. And then it was over to Peter, I believe.
Pardon my ignorance, but it's the wraparound care and expanded entitlements and further expressions of interest by providers, and capital funding will meet that. So does that mean we're still developing outsourcing our work? And what does that actually mean? I'm a bit ignorant. Expanded entitlements and all that, and wraparound care, and also, so it's two things. What is it, and who are we going to provide that? And is that cost effective for us as a council? I expect it is, because we haven't got the work, we haven't got the staff in house. But couldn't we develop that? I don't know.
So what the wraparound programme includes, so two work streams. It includes the expansion of wraparound care, that's childcare between the hours of 8 and 6. So if a child attends a school, the intention under this programme then is to have available locally for parents and carers access to preschool and after school childcare. That wraparound bit is really to say that it's available at the beginning and the end of the school day. And in this work stream of the expanded programme, it's really about working with existing partners and providers across the childcare sector to ensure that places are available, and we maximise the opportunity of those places being available. So the government has allocated to all local authorities, it's a national programme, some money then to work with the providers to increase those places. We've put together a delivery plan for the DfE. That delivery plan, for instance, sets out that we've got somewhere in the region of 700 wraparound care places to provide. Already through the allocation of this fund, we've met that target and we've exceeded it by some 80 places. So with the wraparound programme, the take-up's been high, the engagement's been really strong. And who are we working with? It is a mix of private, voluntary and independent providers. Remember, as the local authority, we're a commissioner of places. We act as broker. That means that we are very much part of a brokering and commissioning arrangement across BCP, just in the same as any other local authority. And we act to stimulate the market, and our relations with the sector are very strong. And I think this is an indicator of that strength. But also those providers include schools. So we are supporting our local schools with the prospect of expansion as well. The second element then is the expanded entitlements, and this is the entitlements that enable parents to access a free element of childcare provision for children aged 9 months old and upwards. And there's a sort of a programme really of expansion that takes us up to 2025. So in 2024, 9 months could access, if you were 9 months old, parents could access 15 hours of free entitlement. And as we move to September 2025, parents of those children can access 30 hours. So it's a sort of a staged increase of entitlements for parents to access free provision, and there are expansions to 2-year-olds. So it's wholly positive in terms of access to childcare, and our job as part of the council is around that sufficiency, as well as sort of being a commissioner and broker to ensure that there are sufficient local provision of places that are of high quality and are flexible to meet the needs of parents within their local communities. So we're really keen to demonstrate to you that we've done a really good job and we've got the money out. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Thank you, as always. I have a question from Sandra.
Apologies, Chair, and apologies to officers for my inappropriate comments. It was my intent to relate to budget / value for money and I have to frame my questions appropriately.
No, there was no need for that. Thank you, but no, it's fine. Thank you. Appreciate that. So we are asked to agree. I just wanted to make a brief comment about the recommendations on the papers. So this one relates to cabinet, and I would make a plea that recommendations on the papers for the committee relate to the committee. I don't know if that seems more appropriate, rather than to cabinet, just for this stage of the process of scrutiny. And so I think really what it's asking is that we agree it, and so therefore I can then go to cabinet when appropriate and say that we have agreed this paper. So are we happy to agree this paper? Thank you very much. Thank you. Wonderful. So that moves us on to items for information. And the first one of those is the school admission arrangements. And again, this is actually this will go to cabinet as well. Now, traditionally with items for information, we don't really discuss them, but as this is going to go to cabinet and it will go to February's cabinet, I think it would be worth just acknowledging that I'm sure colleagues have read this paper. And I would just like an acknowledgement, if that is the case, that colleagues are happy with this paper and happy that it goes in its current form to cabinet, with no further comment. Thank you very much. As I understand, it's just a question that dates have been changed. Nothing germane has been altered. Thank you very much. And then we have the, I'm so sorry, I've done it again. Tanya, I haven't thanked you. I'm so sorry. Goodness me, I actually have many more manners in real life than I seem to manage in committee. Yeah, I apologise. Thank you very much, as always, for your excellent report. So sorry. So the IRO annual report, again, the recommendation here is for it to be discussed, but it comes to us as an information item. I open it to the committee just very briefly if there are any comments colleagues wish to raise at this point. Otherwise, it's here for information. Everybody is happy with that. Thank you very much. So, okay. I then turn to Richard, our portfolio holder, for his update, which I think you've got quite a lot to cover this time, haven't you? So I'll let you crack on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I have got a bit because of, I'm sweeping up a few things from previous meetings, which are action points. So I'm trying to get them all in. First off, at the last Children's Over in Scrutiny, I said that Ofsted are coming. Well, they've gone, and they've written their report. In an accident of timing, their report will be published on the 29th. That's tomorrow. So before you ask, I'm not allowed to tell you the outcome, not at the moment anyway, but I've been spending a bit of time reading firstly the draft report and then the final report and comparing it to our last full inspection. Everyone who's interested will also be able to do that tomorrow. Before you stay up until midnight to read it, it will probably be published at around 9:30 to 10 o'clock tomorrow, so you can all go to bed early. Just search for Ofsted reports, then BCP under other organisations. There will be links, of course, provided if you want to follow them. What I can say is that the Children's Services team, that's the whole team from the Director of Children's Services and her senior team, a lot of them are here now, social workers, the team leaders, IROs, PAs, support staff, young people who were interviewed. In fact, everybody were fantastic during the 3-week inspection. It was 3 weeks, or 2 weeks they were here and then 1 week they were here before. Sort of not in person beforehand, and I would like to thank them all for what they did. I know I saw at close hand how much work it was. The last thing I have to say about Ofsted is that they're coming again, this time for their SEND inspection. We don't know when this will be. The chances are that it will be in the next 2, 3 or 4 months. They like to keep that sort of thing a surprise, but we need to be aware. In the November meeting, members of Youth Parliament, that was Ruth particularly because it's on her campaign, asked about the funding designated to address homelessness in PCP and how much of that would be allocated to combat youth homelessness. I said that I would look into this issue and provide feedback. So BCP Council received 213,000. The grant must be used by the end of March this year and is targeted for assisting reducing the number of people either sleeping rough or at great risk of sleeping rough, including providing support for veterans, care leavers and victims of domestic abuse. We have targeted the support in the following interventions. Additional street outreach workers for St Mungo's to support the people currently sleeping rough. Support workers to help people move out of temporary and supported housing, including young people's housing schemes, to free up more spaces. Additional emergency accommodation rooms and bed and breakfast hotels. This will assist young people where required. A social work assistant to help social care with assessments of those at risk of rough sleeping, including young people. A housing officer to support people leaving the criminal justice system, also will include young people. By the way of context, the information below may assist about youth homelessness. Each month, around 5% of the people seen sleeping rough in BCP are under 25. This is typically between 5 and 8 people. There are no recorded BCP care leavers sleeping rough. We have about 500 households in temporary accommodation placements in BCP. 37 are households under 25, which include 25 families, 12 single people, one of which is in bed and breakfast. There are no BCP care leavers in this temporary accommodation. We know an increasing number of young people are living in precarious housing in their own temporary accommodation settings like sofa surfing or living with friends and family. The Housing Options team are currently assisting 67 households under 25 who are threatened with homelessness. That's 35 families and 32 single people. And it's an offer here for anybody from Youth Parliament who wish to spend some time with the housing team to find out more about how the council helps young people across this area. Ben, that's Ben Tomlin, is very happy to help set up something. We have a youth homelessness champion in the team, dedicated officers working with young people. So if you could pass that offer on, that I'll be grateful. And I'll also thank you for Ben for providing me this information to share with you tonight. Also at the last Children's ONS, I was asked in a public question about the current overall rate of alternative provisions within BCP for sessions missed, pupil distance travel, pupil allocated places within 6 school days of exclusion. I said that the MIT team is working on this data area for me and we're looking to providing further update for the next committee. So next committee, I've got the update for you. So at this time, the BCP data system are unable to provide this data in terms of sessions missed and distance travelled. A new oversight system in terms of capturing and monitoring the attendance at alternative provision and therefore also logging sessions missed is being developed for implementation by the start of the new financial year. This will enable future reporting on this element. The recent merger of the Schools Inclusion Service area, which manages the AP team, and the service area that covers transport will also enable future planning to track and develop an ability to report on distance travelled for pupils. For a breakdown of the data, now I've got a table here, I'll tell you what's in the table, but when you get the printed one, it'll be a lot easier to see. For breakdown data for autumn term for current academic year, that's 24-25 by phase. A number of exclusions, primary 6, secondary 41, that's a total of 47. Number receiving education by the 6th day, primary 0, secondary 29, that's total 29. And percentage receiving education by the 6th day, primary 0, secondary 0%, secondary 70%, that's total 62%. This actually represents a significant progression from the academic year, the previous academic year, where the whole of that year, 3 out of 97 exclusions were placed within 6 days. That's only 3.1%. The majority of those placed within 6 days are able to access online tuition at that stage until longer term face-to-face provision is provided. Those not receiving provision within 6 days are unable to access online provision either due to their younger age or level of need. current commissioning processes provide a delay at this stage for those pupils requiring face-to-face revision at the start. This is with the current plans is an action to develop to streamline the commissioning process to enable more timely placement for this cohort of children. Now, my next bit of update has been slightly stolen by somebody asking a question before, but I've written an answer to this, so I'm going to say it anyway. So in my answer to the questions at the last Children's ONS, I mentioned that the new belonging strategy was likely to be released before Christmas. However, it isn't going to be ready now until probably at the end of February. There's still a few small tweaks needed, and we have a new permanent director of education who was mentioned earlier starting, so we want to give her time to read and understand the strategy before the launch. It's only right because of course she's going to have to take it forward. I'm familiar with the document. I'm looking forward to its launch. Yes, it is exciting. And I would also say that, yes, it is Sharon's last meeting here, and I was going to also say that, you know, I know she's been really helpful in this meeting, but you've already beat me to it. I would also mention, though, that she's not here today. Nicole Mills is an officer who spent a lot of time with this meeting. It's her last day tomorrow. And so I'm sure you probably, I'm not going to speak for this committee. I'm sure you are quite capable of speaking for yourself, but I'll let you do that in a moment. Two items related to children's on the next cabinet agenda, which is next week: early years and mainstream school funding and schools admission arrangements. Now, Sharon, I think you always come to the cabinet. You're always there, and we're always very grateful because you always have an input into it. And of course, any member of this committee, in fact, any councillor could come to cabinet. So, if those things that you did have on future cabinet meetings, you had just for information today, you do think of something, do come along to cabinet. You know, you're always welcome. Finally, you're aware that we're working on a new children and young people's partnership plan. It was mentioned in the Children's Care and Care Experience Young People's Sufficiency Report earlier. This plan is for the next 5 years. The next steps are for the final design, and it's due to the end of February, ready for the democratic sign-off process starting on the 27th of February. It's on the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Forward Plan for the 11th of March, and is scheduled to come to Cabinet on the 2nd of April. It will then be launched at the end of April. The actual launch date will be announced soon. I've written a forward to it, and so has Kathy, the Director of Children's Services, and members of the Youth Parliament have. And actually, their forward goes first on it, which you'll be pleased to know, so it's the way it should be. When you look at it, you might be interested for you to compare it with the previous Children and Young People's Plan 21-20 to 24. They are quite different documents, and it would be a good thing for you to compare. And I'm looking forward to your seeing this and hearing your comments and thoughts at the next meeting. Thank you, Chair. I did it as quick as I could.
Yes, very well done. Thank you. Gosh, there was a lot of information in that. Before I say anything about Nicole, I just wondered, does anybody have any questions or comments relating to the portfolio holders update? Oh, good stuff. Thank you, Peter. Okay, so in that case, on behalf of my colleagues on this committee, yes, we wish Nicole well. Tomorrow's her last day, goodness me. I've seen her name on many things, and been excellent work over the years, so thank you very much to her, and good luck for the future. Thank you. Right, so that takes us to yes, health representation on the committee. Do you need to behave? Right. Okay. So this is a verbal item because, well, we've already had some email exchange over this. It was one of my actions from the previous meeting was to investigate the possibility of a health representative on this committee. I have done that. I've approached NHS Dorset. They have made the suggestion of their chief nurse, a lady called Pam O'Shea. And from the feedback I've had from the committee, I've had feedback from nearly everybody, and everybody who has replied positively. So I think really all I'm doing here is getting a formal, hopefully yay, to proceeding with that, therefore extending a proper invitation. Pam will come to our meeting assuming she can make it, in March. And the intention is that she will attend the meetings that are relevant to health, which is essentially the education side of our meetings. If anything else would come up in any other meeting that would be relevant to her, then obviously we would extend the invitation again. The plan is that hopefully, if that all works, it will be a rolling invitation and she will become a sort of de facto member of the committee. So is everybody in agreement with that, or any other comments or questions? No? Wonderful. Thank you. So I think that speeds us nicely onto the work plan. Let me just check that I don't have anything else. No. So in that case, I'm going to hand over to Sinead, who is going to take us through the work plan.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to give a quick update in regards to a few of the pending work items on the work plan. Just to confirm that we've put the key lines of inquiry document through to the members of the working group for the family hubs. We're going to try and organise a meeting with the members of the working group in the following weeks with some officers just to finalise the scope of that. And then additionally, just to advise the committee that the key lines of inquiry documents for the next items on the next meeting have been circulated. And if anyone has any input for those, if they could return them to me by next Tuesday, that would be great. And just an update in regards to the briefing sessions that are going to be organised on the months that we don't have this committee. I'm hoping to get those dates finalised soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got David indicating.
Can someone kindly remind me around exclusions and where we had that on the work plan and now it's not? Have I missed something here? Did we decide to do something different with that?
So exclusions was on the work plan. I think it was a part of the, well, I'm in communication with children at the moment. We're just considering whether it was part of the previous AP update that we received in November. And then based on that, we're going to see if there's work to be added to the work plan going forward.
Essentially, some of that information was covered in that update in November. I suppose it would be for us to decide if we need more and what more it is that we want. Perhaps that's something we could pick up by email if that's particularly on your mind. I'd be very keen to hear your views on that. Thank you. Any other comments on the work plan? Just to say that it does, I will be meeting to look at things for after March, to start sort of slotting things into that. But as we know, things come up as they, as we go through the year, definitely plenty of things will come up. So I'm not worried about that being empty, put it that way. And we have Lindsay indicating.
Thank you, Chair. A slight tenuous link to your work plan, but important to raise. I think you did some really important work on your budget working group last year. And I just want the committee to be aware that the Cabinet has now provided responses to the recommendations that your working group put forward, along with all the other ONS budget working groups. Those responses are contained within the budget report that are within the pack for the ONS board on the 3rd of February. If you want to go straight to those, they are at Appendix 3A. I just, for fullness, want the committee to be aware that those responses have been provided back and that you can go and see what they are.
Thank you. And again, I suppose if there's anything that comes out of those responses for anybody, just that's an email exchange that we can pursue over the next few weeks. Any other comments on the work plan at this stage? Oliver?
Just wondering if, as we're having the CAMS transformation on the next meeting, the looks of this, if it's worthwhile trying to arrange with Dorset CAMS someone to attend from there. Obviously, it's not a mandatory thing, but just asking them to see, try to get their point of view on that transformation would be good too.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, in my head, I suppose I was thinking we could flag up to the new to Pam O'Shea that this is an item, and she could come. But you would like somebody specifically.
I suppose someone who sees on a daily basis or sees the interaction between BCP and Dorset CAMS would be quite a useful participant in that debate.
Thank you. Rachel.
That's all right. Helen Duncan-Jordan would be the person to invite.
Certainly happy to look into that for you. Yeah. Could you? Thank you. Got that captured. Peter.
Just quickly, and it's probably my own mad head, but when it comes to deep diving on things, I kind of go into a whirlpool of questions and stuff, and I'd like to thank Lindsay really for helping to. Sometimes you've helped to reduce them down to some key things, but I often think in the time scale that we've got to deep dive, we are overlooking maybe some things which may need as much emphasis and priority to kind of dig up and look at the worms underneath. And it's a very complex piece of work that kind of we're involved in. I was just wondering, has anyone else found that when they're looking at sort of deep diving on a particular issue, whether they found like a labyrinth of stuff or whether it's just my head? I would like some guidance on that. Thank you. Because it does seem a very complex thing that we have to do in a very short space of time.
Is this scrutiny as therapy? Okay. Sorry. No, I mean, if anybody wants to come back on that. I think generally reflecting the complexity of what happens within BCP in general and children's, frankly, in particular, in my view, is worth, taking a moment with, because it's true. There is an awful lot going on, and you realise what the officers are doing. And it's a constant challenge to this committee and to the organisation about how that oversight is best done. I think that it's something Lindsay spends an awful lot of time thinking about as well, and does, as you say, guide us extremely well in that endeavour. In terms of, were you specifically thinking about the budget deep dive, or were you thinking about working groups in general?
It's just sometimes, with everything else, it just seems very a quick time scale to kind of deep dive and then look at how because we're working in isolation, almost like it's in COVID, isn't it? We're sat at our PCs, we think something and we bang it into a report. And it would be nice if we could build in where we get in a room together and say, this is what I'm thinking, and we come up with a common theme and messages that maybe I'm just complicating things, I don't know.
Well, I think in terms, I know, Lindsay, I'll come to you in a second. I think in terms of the budget stuff, I think it could be feedback about how we do that for next year. And I'm sure Lindsay would be all ears to hear that. Lindsay, over to you.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I think it's worth always bearing in mind that there is such a vast area and huge amount of detail for you to wrap your heads around in order to do the scrutiny justice. And of course, you can't do all of that. You can't know everything. And as ever with scrutiny, it's always about picking a certain amount of things and not trying to do it all. And then in the topics that you do want to look at, whether that's in committee or working group, having as refined a scope as possible so that you can get down to the level where you can really understand it and make recommendations is always going to be crucial. So I think continuing to scope tightly with whatever you're doing will always be helpful. And the committee can explore other ways of doing their scrutiny, like inquiry afternoons or days, so that you can work through a topic in detail and come up with recommendations. So we're always open to exploring different ways of making things work with you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments on that, I'm just going to wrap. That takes us neatly back round to the Chloe's for the CAMS transformation and the speech and language therapy update for next meeting. Please do lend your brains to those Chloe documents, and all the comments welcome. We can refine them afterwards, but we can't refine if we haven't got anything. Thank you. Right. In that case, that brings us to, I hand over to you at this point? No, it's me. Sorry.
So next up, just for the update, and then you just need to pass that to the
Thank you. Okay.
committee's agreement.
Yeah. So what's going to happen next is that we are going to receive a briefing on the Ofsted inspection that happened. Rachel will take us through that. As was mentioned earlier by Richard, this is embargoed until until tonight. And so unfortunately, and it is unfortunate with the timing, that cannot be held in public session. It felt more important that the committee heard than that we waited, as it were, for public session. So my proposal is that we do hear this update and we hear it in a private session. To that end, so I have to ask your permission as a committee. Do you concur that that's what we should do? Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. So I read out the extract. Okay. In that case, the committee is asked to consider the following resolution: that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 in part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So, do you consent to that? Thank you. So thank you everybody for that. Just the committee would like to note the report that we've just heard, and thank you for everyone who has been involved in that in the Ofsted inspection. So that brings us to the end of the meeting, and thank you very much and good night.